Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of our First Impressions series. This is our unboxing ad tech video series that we put together and try to collect conversations and demos of things that we think everyone in the industry and on the publisher side need to hear. Interesting enough, today we're not doing as much a demo as more talking about an approach, a philosophy toward outsourcing, toward management that I think all of us need to think about and to hear. And to help me with this conversation, we've got Jonelle and Lisa. Jonelle is with Mansueto. What is your role, Jonelle? What's your title?
VP of Sales Planning and Revenue Operations here at Mansueto Ventures, home of Inc. magazine and Fast Company.
Great. And Lisa, your title, and you're with SEBPO, of course.
Yes, I am the Senior Director of Program Management and with SEBPO, and I've been with them for a little over 6 years.
Great, great. So I want to start this conversation with, Jonelle, I think you're going to have to give us some context, right? So you talked about those great brands that you work with, and it's a company that does just not only content, magazines, it does event. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. And again, you've got your kind of remit, right? And you've got quite the team and quite the tasks on your plate. I think I'd love to understand a little bit about, again, what you're managing and what you're in charge of. And then I want to get toward that idea of like when outsourcing and thinking through a different way than how you were working started to come up. Can you talk to that?
Sure. So overall, I've been with the company for about 10 years, over a decade, I would say. I was there for 6 years, took a little bit of a break, joined Rodale for a year, and then decided to come back. I manage sales planning and revenue operations. So starting with, partnering with our sales and marketing teams to respond to RFPs. So I have a team of media planners that support that effort. And then post-sale, I have the campaign management team and ad trafficking team. My team is also responsible for programmatic, managing the partnerships, monetizing our unsold inventory. And we're also in charge of billing reconciliation, so working very closely with our finance team. So it encompasses a lot. Prior to Mansueto Ventures, I was at Time Inc. And then prior to that, I started my career in ad operations at a small ad network.
Great, great. So with that experience, right? And again, like that's a lot, right? Of various things to manage and so forth. Talk about just kind of some of the challenges that you have with that, again, between all those skill sets to keeping good people to all those types of things. From a management perspective, what are some of the things that you're having to kind of work through?
Yeah, I would say in my first 6-year tenure at Mansueto Ventures, the biggest challenge that I saw was bringing talent on board and retaining talent. Being that Inc. and Fast Company are, it's definitely a smaller organization. We do have brand cachet, but we're not, your Condé Nast, Time Inc.
Oh, stop it! Stop it! Stop it!
I think bringing talent on board that was very attractive, right? Being that we're a small organization, what attracted talent to us, especially my team, is that they really felt like they can get in there, learn, feel like they're making an impact. But to an extent, that was also what made it difficult to retain talent, because it was, especially my team and the organization as a whole, was seen as a stepping stone almost. So after just, typically a year or two, young talent are almost ready to just spread their wings and explore other opportunities. And I certainly sympathize with that because that's how I started. I was at a small ad network called Vizzy for 2.5 years. That's how I got started in my career in ad operations. And yeah, after a couple of years, I was ready to spread my wings and look at other opportunities and join a much bigger company. And that's how I ended up at Time Inc. So I certainly sympathize with that. And I knew that, was always a reality when we would bring new talent. We would invest heavily in training them. And we were proud once they were ready to spread their wings, and, always, proud when I see them on LinkedIn or run into them at conferences to see how much they've grown outside of Mansueto Ventures. But I always, would hope that they would come back. And we've had, a few instances of that. I kind of want to take credit to, the Boomerang Club in Mansueto Ventures, because I certainly did that myself. And we have a growing Boomerang Club at Mansueto Ventures. But when I left Mansueto Ventures after my, first 6-year tenure there, and then I rejoined after just a year of being away, I wanted to kind of rethink and restructure my department at that time. And that's when the idea of outsourcing really came in.
Yeah. So, and you hit on something, and I want to dive right into where you're going with that, right? But I think your story rings so true for so many of us that, if you create these opportunities for people to learn, and quite honestly, there isn't enough talent in our industry, if you think about it, right? In one particular way, there's a lot of talent, but there's something about the fact that people have the opportunity to go and try other things and whatever very easily, and whether that be for a salary bump or to try something new, right? And so that retention piece is an underlying strain I think most everyone has, right? How do you keep, as long as you can, right? And again, you're happy when they go to find something else. I love the idea of calling it the Boomerang Club. Like that's amazing, right? Of kind of like, yeah, go have your adventures, go have your walkabout. We'll be here. And I think if you create that strong a culture that people are coming back to be a part of that, that's amazing. That's amazing to know. But you started to think, and I don't know whether that retention piece to just, again, the challenge of like, gaining people, training people, losing people got you toward outsourcing. But can you talk a little bit about kind of that journey in terms of exploring that and moving forward?
Sure. So this was back in 2018 when I decided to return to Mansueto Ventures. And essentially, I came back to MV at an elevated role. So I was basically managing the department and had full hiring, firing responsibilities. And naturally, though, when I rejoined MV, I think at the time, the organization as a whole was going through a reorganization. And it was a little bit of a tumultuous time. So there were people that were ready to move on. So I really saw that as an opportunity to rethink my department, reorganize it, and really be strategic about how can I best leverage the existing talent that was under me. But at the same time, having thought about the challenges of attracting and retaining talent, how can we make the team more stable? And naturally, outsourcing came into strong consideration for me. And to be honest, I had already thought about it, but I was just never in a position to make that decision myself. Having attended Ad Monsters, Pub Forums, numerous times. Previous to that, I had already been introduced to outsourcing companies. And I always, gravitated to SEBPO. Met Ava at conferences and just built that relationship. So when I returned to MB, it was time to really seriously consider that. And I wish I can say that my process of selecting and making that decision was more methodical, scientific, and logical. But to be honest, it was more so, having been introduced to all these different outsourcing companies, I went off vibe primarily. It really was the relationship that I cultivated with Ava years prior to, me coming to a point in my career where I could actually, seriously consider outsourcing.
Well, what's interesting about that, right? Something I think we all have to remember that, I really appreciate kind of that candor to it, right? Because there's a piece of this that, like, you want to work with people you want to work with, right? I think you could sit there and say you might find the best trafficker out there, but if they yell at people, they're not fun to be around, like all that kind of stuff. Like, do you really want that part? Again, it sounds like culture is very important to you, right? And so I think that applies to a partner. I want to step back one step, Lisa, and come to you on this of, what Jonelle laid out is some rethinking about reorganization, trying to understand exactly whether everything was all set. Is that something where you see a number of publishers, like, when those types of opportunities come up, that some of these conversations start to evolve, right? Is that in line with what you see other publishers doing, or kind of sometimes what sparks the idea for someone to kind of say, I think we're ready to have this conversation?
I think that everyone, when they come to us, they have the need. And as Jonelle mentioned, sometimes it's methodical, sometimes they can assess or identify what the need is, but many times we find that they don't know how to execute and adopt internally. And when I was introduced to Jonelle back in 2018, I think Todd and I went to visit you in New York, and we did a discovery to just talk to him about what his needs are and how he can leverage our teams. And Jonelle definitely is everything that he's saying when he bids someone farewell. That was actually the first email that I saw that was very connected to the person and very genuine to in wishing them well, which I thought was very admirable from a leadership point of view. And I've also seen emails welcoming people back. So it is a culture that he cultivates, and we feel that as well. So it's definitely a partnership where we are very collaborative. As he mentioned, Ava introduced SEBPO to Jonelle, and then we're all very close knitted as a family, and we team together. So we identify what the need is and try and help them through identifying how to work with us as well.
I want to touch on some of that stuff, but again, I think a couple things off that. Like, so obviously, Jonelle. So again, like, that's amazing, right? You're sending away good luck emails and the welcome back type of things and whatever. I guess what's your approach to just that level of I don't know, relationship with your employees? These are people that work for you. Like, how do you approach that so that, again, you create that kind of environment where you're doing that?
Yeah. My team has always been very lean, and naturally that lends itself to being a close-knit team and really, a family. And I care deeply about their success, no matter where that success may ultimately lead them to. I always try to find new career growth opportunities for them within the company. I always advocate for their movement within the organization. But when that opportunity just isn't there, I am proud, wherever they land after Mansueto Ventures, and always keep in touch and see where they're at in their career. And whenever there's an opportunity that opens up here at Mansueto Ventures, I always keep them in mind.
Very good. Great. So let's go back to, you felt the right vibe, felt like they're, Lisa, everyone comes in, they meet with you and start talking and assessing potential needs. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I guess, whether, lessons learned in that process to, some of the things that you feel like even others would like benefit from hearing, but maybe just start with just like, how did that go? What are some of the, how did you kind of approach it?
Sure. So I think initially we were presented with the question of, do we leverage both resource centers, El Salvador and DACA, or do we go with just one resource center? Cost was a factor. Time difference was a factor. And initially, we were very hesitant to leverage both resource centers. To us, it felt like, even though this is an outsourced team, it really needed to be closely integrated with our core team, our domestic team. So we were leaning more towards, only leveraging the El Salvador team. I don't really remember anymore because it's been a little while. If we did decide to test that out first, just one resource center, and then eventually expand, I think that's how we did it, to be honest. But that's always been how we've gone about this partnership, testing and learning and continuously learning. And yeah, it's just not being afraid to, going into something new, maybe failing, and then resetting and pivoting to something else.
So let me ask you a question. So you talked about that there were the two pieces, right? So again, there was some idea there of trying one over the other and stuff like that. How did that evolve? Like, are you utilizing both teams now? Is there, how do you look at that? Again, like, that's an interesting thing for someone who isn't as involved in that, of like having those two teams. How does that feel? How does that work?
Yeah, so we do leverage both resource centers now, and we actually did that very early on. Ultimately, we broke it down to what are the tasks and responsibilities that we needed support with. And to us, there were two buckets. There was QA, trafficking, screenshots, the more technical aspect of ad operations that are more timely and are typically needed now type of tasks and requests. So to us, that naturally lent itself to us leveraging the El Salvador team because they are closer to our time zone. Right. And then there was a different bucket of tasks and responsibilities that we really needed support with, and that was more on the reporting and analytics side. And those types of requests, we can more easily set expectations that, that takes a little bit of time. So it's not as timely. So that those are the kinds of tasks that can be done off hours when, or before our core team domestic here logs on for the day. So yeah, very early on, we did ultimately decide to leverage both resource centers. And over the years, we've just added new responsibilities, grown the teams as a result of that. We've even found another department within Mansueto Ventures, our MV Works production and social team. So we've elevated a couple of folks from my resources to that new opportunity. And we now also have a separate campaign management team, which was a career advancement for more senior and the ones that are, we've seen that they've grown a lot and now can advance to a campaign manager role.
There's a couple things there that you hit on that we have to kind of explore a little bit further. I want to go one other direct, part of that, Lisa, to you, right, is, something I just heard Jonelle talked about was this idea of like, we started here with this particular role or that particular part, and then kind of hear that kind of expanding the scope. Is that what you see a lot of companies do? Is that kind of, and again, because Jonelle, I'm going to be turning this back to you in terms of the reaction. Once you start talking about outsourcing, you get a lot of emotions kind of come from that, right? And so, Lisa, I'm kind of curious as to how you hear people kind of navigating that, like, well, let's dip our toe in, but we're not sure type of thing.
I was just thinking that same term, dip our toe. You took it from me.
Yeah.
No, everyone's different, right? So they have a need, and after we go through our discovery and assess what their need is, it really depends what their motivating factor is in determining which center or both, right? So Jonelle mentioned cost. He mentioned skill set and tasks. And at the end of the day, what his priority was, what he needed the most help with at that time and during a time frame, and which is why he went to El Salvador, although he wanted both. So he dipped his toe per se with the El Salvador team first, or delivery center. And then shortly after that, I don't know if it was like within 3 to 6 months, it was very shortly after that, he augmented his team and we added the delivery center from DACA, which focused on the reporting that Jonelle referenced. And it was just, I guess, a very optimized way of support, because the DACA team did perform their tasks before the start of our US business day. So
Right. So you kind of wake up, the reports are there. Believe me, every day I wish the reports were there ready for me to to start to look at. So and I kind of touched on this, right? So again, you've worked hard as a leadership style to, maintain your team, create that culture or whatever, and then you start talking about outsourcing, and suddenly it feels like you're bringing in this other team, right? What was that kind of reaction that you got, and how did you kind of navigate through that, just with the team itself?
Yeah, I would say that there was definitely trepidation from the core team, my domestic team. Naturally, that was seen initially as somewhat of a threat to their positions in their career. So there was definitely a lot of effort made from my part, I guess, in terms of messaging, proper messaging, and really getting them comfortable about the idea of, this is really career growth opportunity for them, and expanding their skill sets and their experience. So once we had 2 delivery centers, there were 2 key team members in my department that were ready for that management experience. And that's how I restructured my department. One of them was essentially managing the El Salvador Delivery Center, and the other managing the DACA Delivery Center. That allowed them to kind of hone in their management skills. And to me, my philosophy at that time was, let me step back and let them drive where they want those delivery centers to go. So really gave them full ownership to how can we best leverage the El Salvador Delivery Center and the DACA Delivery Center, and then between them collaborating on how can we, not treat them as two separate delivery centers, even though each one specialized in, okay, one is focused on the trafficking side and the more technical aspect of ad operations, and the other more analytical. But ultimately, it was very important for there to be collaboration and that cross-pollination between the teams. So actually, early on, we thought, is that most effective that we have, two teams and one specialized in one specific area of our function and the other very specialized in the other aspect of our function. And we thought that maybe we needed to just remove that barrier and have them all be doing the same thing. I think we tested that a little bit, but ultimately we realized that the skill sets and the strengths were there for them to continue to have their specialization, but still encourage that cross-training and cross-pollination so that each delivery center can serve as backup to each other. So we continue to encourage that. We continue to focus on that, even though they are still specialized in the responsibilities that they focus on.
You hit on a thing there that I've always thought about in terms of just overall hiring, right? And you've kind of applied it at a grander scale than I normally am, saying it or positioning it, but right. But like, I think within our space and our role, finding specialists, right? Finding people who are really good at a particular task is really helpful. But there's almost a part that you want to take specialists and make them generalists, right? And generalists to be specialists. Like, you need that crossover to really fully be able to support everything that you have kind of going on, right? So it sounds like, I mean, just hearing the way you kind of said that, it feels like those teams, the SEBPO teams, became a part of your team. Is that like overstretching it? Can you talk a little bit about that feel?
No, not at all. I think that hits it on the head. We very much treat the SEBPO team members as part and as much an integral part of our teams. Nowadays, I'm a little bit removed from that a bit, but that still continues to this day for my managers. They continue to cultivate those, close-knit relationships with the SEBPO team members. They're always part of the fold. We still have weekly MV plus SEBPO team meetings where at least once a week we're all in the same Zoom room, and each pod, each teams have their own weekly team meetings. But yeah, that's still very much a focus. And, we always try to think about each individual too, and knowing exactly where they're at in their career and cultivating that and seeing if there are opportunities for them in the future to advance into something else. We always want, our team members to just continue to be, part of the team. Sometimes, they are pulled away from us, and Lisa can probably talk about this. And we're always sad when that happens. But at the same time, proud that they've gained the experience that they've gained being part of our team, being having invested, their time and effort in helping us, and then taking that to help other publishers. But yeah, we definitely care about them as well, and would want them to, advance in their careers. And that's why I always socialize, here's the SEBPO team that has been so beneficial to my team. how can you potentially leverage it? And that's really the start of, the MVWorks production and social team, leveraging now 2 resources out of SEBPO.
Right, because what you're just saying is you're talking to another department in your company, and it isn't, I have this outsourcing solution, again, in a cold kind of way. It's like they're a part of our team, and they can do this piece as well. Again, it's almost like you're naming names where I don't think a lot of, like, everyone thinks that way. And I think that that's like kind of amazing to kind of, again, these are people, they're a part of your team. Again, the arrangement's a little different than they directly report to you, but there's efficiencies to that, right? And Lisa, to you, right? Like, on one hand, I feel like this is a unique story, and at the same time, I've heard Rachel Savage and others of your clients that kind of talk the same way about, like, your team being a part of their team. Love your kind of reaction to hearing this, and in terms of how, again, like how everyone else should be kind of thinking about this in terms of, like, this doesn't sound as much like outsourcing in the first thoughts you have about it, but just actually again, team extension and so forth. Can you elaborate on that in your thoughts?
So first, Rachel's another great leader. I had the honor of escorting her to Bangladesh, her and her team, and saw firsthand how engaged she is with training and how much she loves the team. With Jonelle, he's definitely, I think, one of our great innovators in terms of partners. The way that he integrated our team into his internal teams, he mentioned weekly calls, was a first for some of our team members to be exposed to just not only like what's on the plate for this week, what campaigns are we working on, and explaining, connecting the dots for them internally so that they can understand how the business runs and what their role is in that process. But from a personal level too, I mean, there are times where I think people introduce like puppies that they just welcomed into their family, or different instances where they were able to connect on a level that they never had before. And that created a very inclusive environment where they felt like they were part of that family and not like an outsourced vendor. So doing that makes them feel more engaged and committed. And it actually is the best, I think, return on your investment, because you have a true productive employee who feels like they want to do better because they feel like you are encouraging them to do so. In terms of the promotion or the growth path, the career path that Jonelle also alluded to, was that the campaign management component was a first for us too, because of Jonelle's open-mindedness and wanting to encourage growth internally and with his team as well. That allowed us the opportunity to provide more growth to our team members, not just, to join another team or to become a team lead. They actually felt that they could pursue something and stay with Jonelle's team and be a client manager. So he has a whole other team that we've cultivated with Jonelle's team to do that. And it's been wonderful opportunity. When we do pull people off Jonelle's team, it is because they want to pursue something like a leadership role, and but we're happy because we know that if they come from Jonelle's team, they are really hardworking, they understand the landscape of the business, and they're just great motivated employees. So thank you for that as well.
Jonelle, you're an innovator. Did you hear that? Like, you're an innovator. How like, do you feel like there's a part of it, like, I can't even necessarily figure out the right way to ask the question, Jonelle, but other than, like, did you feel like that was an innovation, or was it just like, I mean, I've known you for a long time, that just feels like it would be natural for you to do, to kind of pull that in. But was there, again, like, your thought process to kind of go like, let's grow those people too. Let's grow the people that are on someone else's team and have them have career path aspirations and stuff like that. Is that innovation, Jonelle, or is that you just being Jonelle?
I mean, it's obviously so nice to hear that. Thank you, Lisa. I think it was more intuition, to be honest. And intuition becoming an innovation, sure, I'll take it. And I think what's beautiful about the partnership, especially with Lisa, she has been so instrumental, is that that really opened our eyes to some of our blind spots. We really saw SEBPO as a strategic partner, not just, another team that we're just offloading the tasks that, we don't have time to handle. But it's about looking at our processes, our productivity, our efficiencies, and continuously finding ways to improve. That has always been our philosophy and mantra.
That's great. That's great. So, I mean, we've covered a lot of ground, right? From, again, just looking at, again, I think you just really kind of hit it again, right? Of this idea of just like this partnership, that this is a kind of a relationship, right? That the vibe feel, right? Like this feels like the right direction to kind of go in. It's kind of preparing your direct reports and managing and messaging, right, in a way that they understand that this is good for them. And again, I think that goes to the retention piece, right? I think you're going to get that, you're going to retain people by giving them the opportunity for them to, again, look up from their keyboard sometime, right, and kind of do that. And then it feels like there's an aspect that, again, you're bringing additional people in. And so why wouldn't you bring them onto calls? Why not incorporate a little bit of that kind of personal touch to it, right? Versus it just being a Jira ticket system, right? Where you're just going, send it along and then go like, how come I didn't get it back quickly enough? And, again, that almost like transactional relationship is something where, again, I'm sure there's some companies like may almost prefer that. But to me, when I hear you talk about this, you sit there and you kind of like, it's almost like where I was like going with that innovation comment I made of like, innovation, sure, and the fact that you're the first one to kind of really kind of push this boundary, but like, this is what we should be doing, right? Like, this is how we should relate to people and work with people. You get more results when you work with them that way than any other. So why wouldn't you do that? So I just think that there's something to this particular story I think is really, really kind of interesting. One, I don't know if there's anything left unsaid between the two of you. Have anything there? And, again, if anything in terms of like, maybe I'll just leave with this of like, any advice or anything else to anyone else that's considering outsourcing or trying to take it to the next level. Any thoughts on that, Lisa or Jonelle?
Let me add something a little bit more to the, really bringing the team as part of your core team as well. It was really important to me that it wasn't just, a Jira ticketing system. I think it was actually even a little bit more of a push and pull between us and SEBPO on that aspect, because initially, a task comes in, and we need their support in that, and it was almost a random or based on bandwidth. On who gets assigned to take care of that task. But over time, we really saw that there was a need to create more defined pods and really allow someone from the El Salvador Delivery Center and someone from the Dhaka Delivery Center to be assigned to a specific campaign manager, a specific set of sales reps. And that way, they become more and more familiarized with the accounts that they're managing, and they start to feel a sense of ownership for the success of those campaigns. Obviously, sometimes depending on bandwidth and workload, someone else may need to step in, but we always try to introduce some continuity and consistency. And I think that's been really instrumental to the success of this partnership.
Very good. Lisa, again, anything left unsaid? And if not, someone that might be interested in learning more about this approach and working with SEBPO, what should they do next?
Well, I just wanted to commend Jonelle's just being a partner with him. It's been an enjoyable experience, and we don't work day to day together anymore, as I'm focused on something else and he's also focused on some higher level things. But to get to this point, it takes a lot of leadership skills, right? So when someone wants to have an outsourcing partnership and they have all these great intentions, sometimes it's dumped on people's lap and they don't know what to do with it. So really taking the time to invest in the partnership, just as you would your internal teams, is key, right? So the pandemic changed the landscape of how we do business. Most people work remotely. And Jonelle, you were the one who said to me when I started asking, like, what should SEBPO do on these calls? And you said, most of my team, or everyone on my team, is remote. So they're just another part of my team that's remote. And that, if you view it that way, in addition to what Jonelle said, how he structured his teams in pods, supporting, specific teams, that's really a key factor to being successful with partnering with us.
That's great.
If they want to learn more about us, they can go to our website, SEBPO.com, or find us on LinkedIn. Reach out to any one of us that are working there, or any one of our partners. I'm sure they'll all have something similar to say, like Jonelle, but yeah, it's been a true pleasure working with him.
That's great. The two of you, thank you so much for the conversation. Again, it's something of just, what I love about this is just, there's even just nuance in this that again, I've been doing this a long time, as you know, Jonelle, and but there's a piece of it of just even hearing you talk through some of that's just kind of just inspiring, and just kind of hearing it in a different way that you just go like, yeah, I could start to build some thoughts here and things from that. So definitely great takeaways from that. Again, Jonelle, Lisa, thank you so much for participating.
Thank you so much.